as parents, we all want to give our kids the best life, and especially the best start to life. So if you are someone who is looking to conceive in the near future, or sometime on the horizon, this is going to be a really good video for you to watch to learn just some information about how we can help our kids in their future and try to avoid the epidemic that we are seeing of so many kids being chronically sick. And so this video might be a little bit long. This is one of my passions, I would say, is some of this fertility, the journey we can take, the way we can change our genetics in terms of epigenetics to really help just give our kids the best expression in their genes, to make them really as healthy and as able to thrive as possible. And so this video might be a little bit long. I'm probably going to read some of the stats from the screen, just so bear with me, but I just want to make sure that this is as clear as possible for everybody. So if you are really looking to conceive and want to get some answers, basically, of what you can do, there are a lot of things, and you're just not told that in the traditional medical world. So we at our office see this pattern all of the time, and we will see moms that come because they had fertility struggles, and then they also had a stressful pregnancy, and then maybe they also had a really stressful birth and they were induced, or they had an emergency C-section, or there was something going on at the end where the doctors thought they saw something and they had all this extra testing, and so mom just was under a lot of stress. Well, then we see baby come in, and baby now has colic, and then they don't grow out of the colic like you're taught, but that stress will turn into something else. So then we see baby has digestive struggles. They might have constipation. Well, they kind of grow out of that, but then they have sleep difficulty, or they have latching issues, and they kind of grow out of that, and they get older and they get bigger, and then they eventually will have ear infections, and then that kind of turns into some sort of sensory spectrum thing, and then down the road they're teenagers and they have anxiety and depression. And so it's this constant struggle of looking at an intake form and seeing every single thing checked off, and it dates back to preconception or conception or pregnancy. And so these things we're seeing really are, it's common. It's a universal experience for a lot of moms that they are experiencing a lot of stress during pregnancy. So what is the issue with that? Well, the issue is that in the US, we do not have good maternal health care. So if you were to look at all of the developed countries and see where their healthcare falls, we are on the bottom of the list. So here are just some stats about it, but the US is first in emergency care, but we are the last in maternal and infant mortality rate, which is crazy because we as a country think we are really good and our health is so advanced, but our studies are 20 years behind, and our current practices that we do for birth, pregnancy, those first few months of life are not keeping up with the data, and they're not giving us good infant health rates. So also the US spends over $500 billion on childbirth each year. The US fertility clinic services market was valued at $7.9 billion in 2022 and will be projected to reach $16.8 billion by 2028. Part of that is because we also know that as IVF and IUI and all of these procedures are getting increased and that rate is going up, we know that sperm is the trajectory is just straight down. It's plummeting. So there are estimates that by 2045, I believe, that men will have zero sperm. So there's something going on that men are being affected, and their reproductive health is affected, and their sperm are not able to be produced and not able to thrive and survive and swim. So just having sperm is one thing, but your sperm have to be a certain grade. They have to have one head. They have to be able to swim straight, which not all sperm can. So when they grade sperm, they are looking at a 0 to 3 scale, I believe. And so on that scale, your sperm can test okay, and it can still be almost all grade 2, which means they can't swim straight. They have an issue swimming. So they're never going to reach an egg, and they could all be grade 2 and not be viable to get you pregnant, but you're testing okay. So all of this fertility, the rise in fertility help is because partially of that, and just a lack of health for all of us, actually. So now we know that 25% of women are being induced. Induction is not typically necessary, but it has become a huge piece of childbirth in a traditional sense in a hospital. There are medically necessary inductions and there are elective inductions, and so many are elective, and we know there are so many issues and consequences of that it is becoming very popular among many hospitals, many people, just because it's convenient. And there's also a fear associated with that, like your baby's too big for your body, or you're past 40 weeks, and so therefore baby must be ejected. And so induction is a stress on the baby. It's a stress on mom. Inductions, I've never had one, but everyone knows inductions are not fun. The feeling you get from going from 0 to 100% with your contractions is not natural. It's not supposed to happen like that. And so it's a big stressor on you and the baby. It's often why baby's heart rate is going to increase and then decel, and there's a lot of fluctuations. And so they get a little panicked about baby staying in too long if mom has been on Pitocin for a certain amount of time. So we also know that 70 to 75% of women in the US are going to receive an epidural during labor. So obviously not having pain during labor sounds great. There are risks associated, of course, with epidurals, and more so I would even say like in the recovery for moms recover faster without an epidural. So there are stressors with that as well if, the epidural doesn't work, or if it's placed in the wrong place, or if there's a lot of things that can go wrong with that as well. So now we also, one of the bigger issues is that 1 in 3 American women are going to undergo a C-section. But that is a very, very high number, and the World Health Organization recommends at max 15% of women get a C-section. There are, again, medically necessary reasons, and then there are elective reasons to get a C-section. And so there are a lot of things that we know as chiropractors, just as people in general who are in the health field, consequences of C-sections for our kids. That is why things like vaginal seeding have come into play, and other practices that try to combat some of that, but we still see all of these interventions that are not making our children as healthy as they could be. And there are many, many reasons that C-sections are necessary and are amazing and are life-saving, and that is not what I am talking about at all. But there are a lot of things that are done because it is best for convenience, money, ease. So that all of that to say, though, about 1 in 7 women are going to suffer from postpartum depression. That does not include any postpartum anxiety, which is a much more common issue and something we see all of the time. And it's not even almost even diagnosed or talked about because it's just so common. And you see your provider 6 weeks one time, and then that is kind of that. So unless you are struggling with depression by that point, you might totally be missed in terms of needing help or needing talk therapy or supplements or some kind of prescription to help you to avoid that postpartum anxiety becoming postpartum depression. So we as chiropractors and also some functional medicine training know that a lot of that postpartum depression and anxiety come from postpartum depletion. So the health aspect of it, the nutrition aspect of it is huge. We know, and this is like where my passion, I can get my soapbox about this, but moms have an egg cycle of 120 days roughly. So their eggs have 120 days where it is released to where it is mature, and then it can become an embryo, right? So we are born, as a woman, you are born with all of your eggs, but how healthy those eggs are, the expression of the genes of your eggs, you really have a window to affect the health of your eggs before the egg is released and then coming down the pipeline waiting for a sperm. And if sperm is not there, egg then comes out and egg does not come out. Sorry, that sounds crazy. But you then have a period. So when we are looking at trying to get pregnant in the near future, we're looking at preconception. We need at least 3 to 4 months planning before our eggs are released during that cycle. And you have a window where you can influence your gene expression. So we all know that we are born with our genes. Someone will say, like, I do this, it's genetic. My parents do this, it's genetic. So we have genes, but those genes can be turned on and off. And so how healthy we are, how healthy the internal environment in our body is, how healthy our mood is, the toxins in our home, what we are feeding our body with, will determine if those genes, like a light switch, are on or off. And so with egg cycle, it's a little more hard because we have our eggs from birth. So if you have a genetic issue, you have had that for life. And so your eggs can be greatly affected. But you can impact them by your choices. Men have a much easier time affecting their sperm health because their sperm life cycle from life to death of a sperm is 90 days roughly. So 3 months where they can truly affect so much about sperm health, sperm quality, all of the things that are going to make your sperm healthy, potent, swim fast, have one head, have one tail, get to point A, from point A to point B in a certain time. All of that is determined by how healthy your body is, how healthy the environment is. So a lot of that goes into nutrition, a lot of that goes into toxins. What are you putting on your body, in your body? This is all why men's sperm is declining so much, because we have so many endocrine disruptors in all of our deodorant, our non-stick pans, our fabric sheets in the dryer. Anything scented that's in your home or a personal item probably has phthalates in it. Anything scented that is with any natural scent, natural flavors in food, all of these things, it's a word to hide what they're giving us. So we talk a lot about fertility work at our office. We have a protocol for people who are trying to get pregnant, and I will say it's pretty strict. Like, we really work on mom and dad, because it is both people who are combining forces essentially to give the best health of themselves together to make the healthiest embryo. So, and everyone thinks that this is like the fastest sperm wins the race. If dad has fast sperm and the boy gets there, that's what's going to happen. It's not true. The egg is there waiting, and if you can see a really great picture of this, it's amazing, but there are just, hopefully, if dad has enough sperm and they're all good quality swimmers, the egg is surrounded by sperm, and the egg should be healthy enough to choose the healthiest sperm. It gets to decide which sperm is there that it wants. And so if egg is healthy, it can make a good choice. But we need a lot of sperm there, and we need a lot of healthy sperm there. And so it's not based on dad about the gender, but what is based on dad is how healthy the embryo is, especially during the first trimester. So a lot of women come to us and they're, very much blaming themselves. They're very upset. Their body has failed them. They keep getting pregnant and then they have a miscarriage. But we know that miscarriages during the first trimester really, really, really are associated with dad's health. We know that morning sickness associated with dad's health. We know that preeclampsia, very much associated with dad's health. Placenta health, the lifeline for baby to get nutrients and everything else that it needs to grow, associated with dad's health. So if dad is coming into this not healthy, not at 100%, if dad is working with toxic fumes, if dad is smoking, if dad is drinking, if all of these things are happening, dad's just eating really high inflammatory foods, dad is overweight, dad does not work out, dad is really high stress and has a ton of cortisol in his system, all of these things are going to affect the health of his sperm and therefore the health of the baby. So one of the other pieces of this is that your stress does not need to be like an emotional stress. When we talk about stress at our office, whether we are talking about someone being stressed from the standpoint of like an emotional stress or a financial stress, a toxic stress from what we're eating and what we're putting in our body, at the foundational level of that, we are talking about your nervous system. So your nervous system is basically an umbrella, and every other system in your body is going to be under the umbrella. So your reproductive system, your digestive system, your circulatory system, your immune system, all of those live under the umbrella of your nervous system. And your nervous system is going to be there dictating how everything else can and should work. So the way that we talk about this, in very simplified terms, your nervous system is divided into a sympathetic system, which everyone knows is your fight or flight, you run from the bear system, or your parasympathetic system, which is your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. The thing is that your parasympathetic side should be deactivating the stress in your body, and the sympathetic side activates it. So basically, your parasympathetic nervous system, like I said, the resting and the digesting, which is what you need to grow a baby, and as a baby you need to develop and mature and grow and learn all the things. This handles input from basically your internal organs, your fingernails, how fast your hair is growing. And so your parasympathetic system is going to decrease your heart rate because it is all very deactivating and it's calming. So it's resting, it's digesting, everything is going at a slow pace. Whereas your sympathetic nervous system, we know it's your fight or flight. It's responding to things like stress and exercise, and that's going to increase heart rate and increase blood pressure. And so what happens is these two systems are always competing. They are always giving you mixed signals. And so if they're both working as they should and working and working and working, and we're doing things like exercising, and we're doing things like digesting food, and we're doing things like being stressed in traffic, or then we're doing things that our body is growing our hair. Your body is just always in this it's a fight of who's going to win. And so what happens is if these are both working as well as they should, we are balanced. They come together and we have a good HRV because our body is balanced in the systems. What happens more often than not, though, is that our body gets very much stuck in that fight or flight because it becomes overwhelming, all-consuming. You wake up to an alarm clock, you're rushing your kids out the door, you are upset about financials with your husband, so you're fighting about that before you go to work. You're working all day, you're stressed from your boss, you get an email from your kid's school, and everything your body responds to everything with cortisol, and it's just consistently thinking that your body is in danger. It is very hard to get pregnant if your body thinks it's in danger. It is very hard to have a healthy body or a healthy baby or a healthy body if your body is perceiving something is terribly wrong, and it's going to be preparing the body basically for action by increasing that heart rate, increasing your blood pressure, sending all of your blood to your muscles so you can move fast and you have tons of muscle tension. So then when that is happening and that is our normal, and we're living in this world where we are constantly stressed, then our body is not going to be able to do the things it needs to do to grow a healthy baby or to even get pregnant in the first place. So one of the things is that mom and dad's HRVs affect this. So dad having a healthy stress response is going to be very important for dad's sperm to be as healthy. And so when we know that if our body is out of a state of balance, it leads us to chronic issues. So this isn't even about getting pregnant sometimes. This is why we know that 70% of women over the age of 35 have an autoimmune condition, because we are living in this state of chronic stress, especially women, and we have a really hard time coming out of that. So that causes us dysregulation. We also know we are a generation that was put on birth control for seemingly nothing, maybe acne, maybe painful periods, and we were never asked, why are periods painful? What is your diet like? What is your activity like? Among so many other questions, our generation was just thrown birth control, and then most of us were on it for 10 years. I was. And until I was having crazy blood pressure that was just unexplainable for someone who was 22, once I got off birth control, that immediately went down. And so that was just never told to me, obviously, and was something that I figured out on my own. But our generation is struggling with fertility. And so there's so much to be said about having your and your partner's bodies being as healthy as they can before you even try to get pregnant. That is going to cause you to have a healthy embryo as a result. It's going to cause a healthy pregnancy as a result with not much stress. It's going to cause a healthy delivery, hopefully, because our body is preparing for the marathon of labor. And so we know that obviously that umbilical cord and placenta are basically what is giving the baby all the nutrients, all the oxygen, and dad's sperm has such a huge role in that. And that's also kind of setting up their blueprint for life. So the other huge thing is that if a mom comes to us and she's already pregnant and she's in terrible pain, she can't walk without experiencing pain. She has sciatic pain, pubic pain, low back pain, rib pain, because your ribs expand 7 inches when you're pregnant. I mean, a woman can come to us in just so much pain and so much stress. Every piece of that's going to the baby. Every single ounce of cortisol is going through that blood-brain barrier to baby. And so high levels of maternal stress are going to cause fetal neurodevelopment issues. So then we see that spiral of a hard pregnancy, a hard labor, hard first few months of life, and then chronic conditions from there on out when that sympathetic system just gets so overloaded that the stress just is transmitted to babies. So it's not a coincidence that in our office we always say that we can tell the difference between chiro babies, where mom came during pregnancy. Mom was coming weekly to get adjusted while she was pregnant to prevent the pain, to also help with timing of labor, to help with the contractions, to help with baby having enough space for unrestricted motion, to help with her ligaments and her joints to stay as they should and balanced and optimal, and so baby could develop as they should. And so we know there's just so much going on with that nervous system too while you are in utero. So again, to read some things so much happens to a fetus before you might even know you're pregnant. If you are someone who is not hyper aware of your body, or you're just trying every month and maybe not testing, or you were not trying and ended up pregnant and then don't know until you've been doing things that you might have chosen not to do if you knew you were pregnant, baby has already developed so much of their body, their spine, their organs before you even know. So at week 3, the nervous system begins to form. Weeks 5 through 8, all of the organs are developing. Week 6, we know the sympathetic nerves, which are involved in social development as well, which is so interesting, begin to form. And then second trimester hits, maybe now people know they're pregnant, they're telling people they're pregnant, they've had an ultrasound potentially. We know bones and muscles are already developing, cerebellum begins to form, and then your vagus nerve myelination occurs, which is the vagus nerve is a huge piece of so much for all of us in our nervous system. The vagus nerve is probably like the pinnacle of health of our nervous system. And so by the 3rd trimester, then we have our immune system. We have rapid brain development. We have autonomic nervous system is totally developed. And then also that by week 40, the vagus nerve and immune system are finally mature. And so there are just a lot of things that happen while we're pregnant and before we might even know that we are pregnant. So making sure we are as healthy as possible coming into the chance of getting pregnant, and dad is as healthy as possible coming into the time to get pregnant, are going to hopefully ensure that baby is as healthy as possible. And so if parents can focus on spending a few months really working on making themselves the healthiest versions that they can be, a lot of these stressors of being pregnant, the pain, the morning sickness, all of those things might never be an issue. And so then we can have a stress-free pregnancy, which then might lead us to a really great, wholesome, amazing, really easy labor, which then hopefully means that we recover really fast. We don't have added issues from having to recover from anything during labor, and we can be full of nutrients from having great prenatal and eating a healthy diet and having all of these things prepared ahead of time. So then postpartum, that 4th trimester, we feel very prepared for and ready to conquer, versus suffering from the postpartum anxiety and depression and all of the other things that we see so many moms really struggle with because they're not supported, they're recovering, they are now stressed themselves, and baby is stressed because baby is feeding off of your nervous system. They don't really have a way to regulate their own yet. So it's really a mirror of mom's nervous system. And so a baby who has colic is so stressful for a mom. You can't help and you don't know what to do. And so if the baby is colic and crying and you just feel like you have no answers and you feel as your baby now, that's going to only further lead and perpetuate any kind of postpartum anxiety, depression, and it really spirals out of control. So all of this, if we could just combat all of the health issues, and we can combat all of the maternal issues with the hospital system, and make ourselves as healthy as possible before we get pregnant, and learn about our stress, and learn about what we're putting in our bodies, and learn about what is in our kitchens and our water and all of the things that we are exposed to, we could hopefully prepare ourselves amazingly so that we have children who are able to just truly thrive from day one. So this would be an amazing way to start combating all of these chronic conditions that we see with our kids. And sometimes that just takes more work on us, but being prepared for a healthy pregnancy is only going to help you, baby, and your future family.